Morning, our guest speaker, Reverend Chris Holton Jablonski, is a lifelong member of the Unitarian Universalist denomination. It happened when his Catholic father and his Methodist mother found the first parish in Framingham while she was pregnant with Chris. He grew up there, then attended Arlington Street Church in Boston, where Kim Crawford Harvey was minister for a decade. He then went to Starr King School for Ministry and then served the UU Church of Berkeley before coming back to New England to serve South Church in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, along with his wife as co-minister.
I invite you now to join with me in a time of meditation and prayer, and we'll follow this time by singing Spirit of Life. You can remain seated for that. So invite your body to quiet, your breath to deepen, and we'll hold silence for a few moments. Precious and powerful source of all life and all love, vast mystery beyond all name and all form, we give thanks. We give thanks for this place, for this embrace, for this powerful love which holds us now and always. If you came through these doors this morning, weighed down, burdened, know that your burden is lighter because of this powerful love. If you came through these doors floating, ebullient, know that your joy is magnified by this embrace, by this powerful love. We give thanks for this circle of witness, for this circle of support, for this circle of action. We give thanks for the privilege of loving one another and serving this hurting world. Amen. I'd carved out just enough time in an otherwise very full day just after the very first snowstorm of this season, and I had made it home with just enough time to inflate these two beautiful, wonderful sleds, brand new sleds that my sons had gotten for Christmas. And they were ready when my eldest son got home from school, and to say he was excited is an understatement. He has an exuberant love, a deep, enthusiastic, powerful love. And so he was excited to open these sturdy LL Bean sleds that I've coveted. I will confess that I have lusted after these sleds for many years. I had worked on my beloved for many years, justifying the expense, showing little receipts for lesser sleds which were destroyed by their exuberant play. So finally we got them, these Cadillac sleds, these amazing, sturdy, beautiful, ridiculously fast sleds. And it seems like a dream to remember it now. But we waited for the snow this year. It seemed like it wasn't going to snow at all this year. We were so foolish. So my 7-year-old, the eldest, was so excited. 8 drawings came home from school, pictures of him sledding down the hills. And we finally climbed all the way to the top. It's called Garrison Hill in Dover, New Hampshire, and it is terrifying. But he loves it. He climbs all the way to the top, and ever since we began, a few years ago, ever since he was allowed, he would go all the way to the very top, throw himself down this hill going so fast. He'll never let me quite forget last year when I tried out last year's sled, a new, large enough theoretically for an adult, fast sled. I flew down, and I was going so fast. And I don't love going so fast. I'm not a 7-year-old boy, and I screamed. I screamed in terror, and he thought it was so funny. Luckily, no profanity leaked out of my mouth. It's a family hill, lots of children, but he loves reminding me of that day and of my fear. So what is it that makes some of us fearless? What makes some of us, what makes all of us sometimes fearless? And how can we cultivate that fearlessness, especially when we most need it? Especially when times are tough and when we are called upon to rise. I love the book and commend it to you all. It's called It's Easier Than You Think by Sylvia Boorstein. She's a Buddhist teacher, and she writes, "Any moment of clarity, undisturbed by the tension of judging or preferring, rejecting or desiring, is a moment of freedom. And we have only moments. Now is the only time we ever have." And I think this is part of it. Some of our fear is about living with an averted eye, about thinking of things that have been, that might be, remembering other moments, thinking of other situations, wondering if they might return, or longing towards the future, conjuring worst-case scenarios, spinning whole possibilities, and then dwelling within them. But this is all that is, she says, this moment. She continues, many meditators, Buddhist or otherwise, know the story of a monk who's being chased by a tiger towards the edge of a cliff. He leaps off the cliff, grasping a vine that has grown over the edge. Below him is a long drop towards certain death, and above him a snarling tiger. As the monk swings in midair, a mouse begins gnawing at the vine above him. His position is one of utter precariousness. Growing out of the cliff in front of him is a wild strawberry. He picks it, he eats it, and he says, "This strawberry is delicious." So much of our attention can go to the tiger, or the vine, or the potential fall. We can cling so tightly to what is ultimately falling away, to what is being gnawed slowly but surely away. But there is this strawberry before us. There is beauty and sweetness to this present moment, not that it is always easy. A few months ago, my family went to Ohio. My wife's grandmother, my much beloved grandmother, had died. And we went out for the memorial to be with the family and to help Lauren's aunt work with organizing and settling things, as you do. Ben, our 7-year-old, was very sad. We were all there, all in the grief, and as grief tends to, it came in waves, hitting all of us at different times. But there was this one moment, as we were on our way from the church to the graveside, that Ben had just a tidal wave of sad crash over him, and he just wept, whole body, full guttural, just huge grief. And I was oddly so grateful. So much thought, so much managing of feelings, so much logistics, so much of the rest of our experience. And right there in the midst of it, his pain, his powerful pain just sliced right down into me. His grief became this cliffside strawberry, just brought me right there. We arrived at the graveside, and I scooped his still just little enough to scoop body up into my arms, and I held him. And we were right there. It was exquisite. I felt our love, I felt our entire family, just felt it all right there in that moment. There would be plenty of time for other ideas, for memories, for the truth of the rightness and the grace of her death, all of her living, for her sweet legacy so alive, and my wife and my boys. In that deep and wailing moment, there was so much truth. Emerson said it so sweetly. In his essay, SelfReliance, he writes, "These roses under my window make no reference to former roses or better ones. They are for what they are. They exist with God today. There is no time to them. There is simply the rose. It is perfect in every moment of its existence. Before a leaf bud has burst, its whole life acts. In the full-blown flower there is no more, and in the leafless root there is no less. Its nature is satisfied, and it satisfies nature in all moments alike. But we postpone and we remember. We do not live in the present, but with averted eye lament the past. Or heedless of the riches around us, we stand on tiptoe to foresee the future. We cannot be happy and strong until we too live with nature in the present, above time. This is what we have. I suppose that's the good and the bad news. These very lives, this morning, these moments stretched out before them, and they will have the fullness of all that is life. They will contain birth and death, sickness and health. They will contain things that we planned on and things we did not, things we desire and things we do not. All of it here for us to experience. In the same book, It's Easier Than You Think, Sylvia Boorstein writes, "My friend Pat died of cancer while in her 40s, leaving 4 children, lots of friends, an interesting law career. Pan lived several months after finding out that her battle with cancer was a losing one. And she used that time to reconcile her relationship with her husband, to finish up all of her law business, to talk with friends and say everything she wanted to say to them. Some of the things that she needed to rectify were emotionally difficult, and she did them anyway. Near the end, she said to me in quite a conversational, matter-of-fact way, 'You know, I've really grown a lot emotionally from this cancer. I've done things that I wouldn't otherwise have done. But honestly, I would rather not have had it and not grown.'" Which I love. Boorstein continues, "Plain truth, growing is not that great. Living is better. Giving what she couldn't change, she lived her last days with grace. None of us wake up and think, 'You know, today I am ready to be stretched to the brink of my coping.' None of us come out of meditation or prayer. None of us will leave this sanctuary this morning with some kind of Purdue oven stuffer roaster spiritual pop-up timer indicating that we have reached a state of spiritual maturity enough to face these lives ahead of us. Instead, we just live. We receive the diagnosis. We hear of our beloved's death. We hear of shootings in Paris, more shootings. We hear of hostages, another group taking even more hostages. Just a few months ago, after the shootings in Paris at the Charlie Hebdo, I was driving home from work, popping back and forth as I do between sports talk radio and national public radio, when the sports talk radio guys started spouting some truly horrifying ideas. They were talking about the shootings, and one of the commentators actually said, "So what is it going to take to fix this? Another crusade?" And one of the commentators agreed. "I think so," he said. I was amazed. In that moment, still another moment of digesting still more unspeakable violence. I struggled to take in not only this tragic loss of life and all of the complex knotted circumstances around it, so many dead and then hostages and so many more dead, but on top of that, I also had to take in the idea that there are folks who, even in hyperbole, would respond to this tragic loss by invoking the massacre of millions of peaceful people. I turned off the car and I came inside, and there, almost perfectly, left out in a little berry bowl that we use after we wash fresh berries, was a bunch of strawberries. And I remembered that teaching, and I remembered the Charlie Hebdo, and I reached out, and I ate one, and it was delicious. So here we are, always, over the cliff, whatever tigers above, whatever fall below, whatever sweet strawberries before us. Here is our fearlessness. Here is our strength. Amen.